Okay, aloha everyone. We are going to call today's board meeting to order at 10:01. Welcome. I am Noelani Kalipi, and I am assuming the chairmanship from Sid Miyashiro, who has done a fantastic job in previous times. We are gonna start with introducing any guests in the room. So, do we have any guests?
Yes.
Ashley Van Yetzer from Big Island, Abalone.
Welcome. Thank you.
I'm Gerald Helsinga, owner of Indo-Pacific Sea Farms, chairman of KPLG.
It's the only guest.
Okay. With that, then I'll turn it over to you, Greg, for roll call.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Chair, and if when you respond, could you let us know if there's anybody else in the room with you? Chair Kalipi,
Present.
Vice Chair Miyashiro,
Present. No one's in the room with me.
Director Bruce,
Present.
Director Jones,
Present.
Director Sirmos is excused. Director Command,
Present, no one's in the room with me.
Director Suji,
Present, no one is in the room with me.
Director Sao,
Present.
Director Hilton,
Present here alone.
Director Bossert,
Present, no one else is here.
Director Kim, I think he'll be joining us shortly. I just talked with him a few minutes ago. Director Wicker is not here. John?
Oh, John Cole, Deputy AG in the conference room.
Greg Barber, Executive Director in the conference room.
Laurent Sambardier, Deputy Director in the conference room.
Christine Edge, Administrative Assistant, Conference Room.
Alex Leonard, NELHA staff in the conference room.
Keith Olson, NELHA staff, conference room.
Chair, that's all the people that we have here as guests and staff and board members, and I believe there's several people online. Micah, Dr. Brodsky, do you want to introduce yourself and let us know if anybody else is in the room with you?
Sure. Hi, Mika Brodsky. I'm the aquaculture veterinarian with the Hawaii Department of Agriculture, and I am in a large room. There are one or two other people here, but I've got headphones in, so it's all contained.
Okay. Pam Madden. Her microphone isn't working, but she's a NELHA staff person in the offices. Jennifer Rasmussen is our business manager. Jennifer?
Here in the Yanahana room, and I'm alone.
Okay, and Bill Morton, I believe he's a consultant with
Pacific Filtration.
Juana.
Yes, hi, Bill Morton with Pacific Filtration Systems. And here with me in the room is Philip Morton. And of course, we've been a tenant at NELHA for the last couple of years.
Thank you. Director Kim has now joined us. Director Kim, we're doing roll call, and let us know if anybody else is in the room with you.
I'm here alone.
Okay, thank you. We have Ray, our marketing guru.
Hi, everyone. I'm by myself.
Thank you. Mark Ladow with Hawaii Public Radio. Mark. Okay.
Oh, he's driving.
He has a mic problem. We have Dell user. I don't know who this is.
That's Monica Duncy. I'm Microbiology Consulting Services. I'm interested in the water quality report.
Okay, thank you. We have Chun KB, I believe you're with DHHL. Hello? Chun KB? Okay. And we have Jamie Masukawa.
How's it going, everybody? Good day. Yeah, Jamie Masakawa from Ship Improvement Systems. Hope you guys are doing good. I'm by myself, so
Okay.
with you, wonderful people.
Chair, that's all of the guests that we have today.
Thank you. We're going to move to the second order of business on the agenda, which is the approval of the May 21st, 2024 NELHA Board of Directors meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Okay, could we get a motion for approval, please?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Just ask if there's any no vote or objections. If
Okay,
not,
are there any objections? If not, the minutes are unanimously approved. Oh, yes?
Chair, I was not present, so I'll abstain from the executive session. Russell Tsuji, thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Can the minutes please reflect that Russell is abstaining from the vote on approval of minutes?
I think he was referring to the executive session. Are we doing item 2?
yeah, it's 2 right now, which is
Russell, we're doing item 2 right now.
Oh, okay, I thought you was on the executive session.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're moving to the, so that's the first one. Sorry. Okay, so again, subject to no objections, the meeting minutes from May 21st for the NELHA Board of Directors meeting have been approved. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 3, approval of the April 9th, 2024 NELHA Board of Directors executive session meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion, could we please have a motion for approval with the note that Russell is abstaining from the vote because he wasn't present?
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Is there a second?
second.
Thank you, Nate.
Chair, this is Alan Hilton. I should likewise abstain. I wasn't present.
Okay. So can the meeting minutes please reflect that both Russell and Alan are abstaining from the vote? Anything else before? Okay. Does anyone object? Hearing no objection, the April 9th, 2024 NELHA Board of Directors executive session meeting minutes have been approved. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public testimony. Is there anyone either online or in the room who would like to provide public testimony?
This is intended for items not on the agenda.
Yes, this is any open item, any item that anyone in the public would like to bring to the attention of the board. This is that opportunity. So if anyone would like to provide any comments, we do have a time limit of 5 minutes each. We ask that you make yourself known at this time. Okay, hearing none. We will move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is old business. And this is a seawater quality analysis final report presentation by Dr. Jim Wyden.
Yeah, we talked about this at our last board meeting, and it was a draft report. And now Jim has finalized, Dr. Wyban has finalized that report. And we asked him if he could come and summarize the kind of the major changes between the draft and the final. Dr. Wyban.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Greg, for the intro. Yeah, I'm happy to summarize the final report. If you could allow me to share my screen, I have a few small deck here. There you go. Let me get this, kind of move this over. Okay. Okay, so at the last board meeting, I gave a preliminary report on this investigation of the seawater quality issues relating to larval survival in the host park. And following that presentation, had several meetings both with NELHA staff and the Tenants Association, KPLG, and revised the document and submitted that to NELHA on June 29th. And I'm here today to quickly review that and answer any questions folks may have. First off, let me just say that NELHA is a world-renowned aquaculture innovation hub. Okay, so the situation with the host park, animal reproduction is a core function in the aquaculture companies at the host park. And a couple of years ago, individual companies started to see some problems they were having in larval rearing, that is the reproduction stage of reproducing their animals. And as a result of that, they formed an association called KPLG, Keohoi Point Larval Group, to discuss what was going on. And when they started meeting together and talking about it, they discovered they were sharing a common problem, that everybody seemed to have some form of this problem. And those discussions then moved on to the NELHA staff and administration. And to address that problem, they put a budget together to create an investigation into that problem. And that's what hired me. I signed a contract in January of this year to work on and try to understand what exactly this problem is. Here's a listing of the members of the Keohoi Point Larval Group. These are the businesses here at NELHA who have talked about this problem. And you can see some of NELHA's largest and oldest tenants are members of the KPLG. In short, the findings of the investigation, and it involved quite a bit of meeting with folks. I went to every individual KPLG member farm and walked through their water treatment systems and discussed their maintenance of those systems and what exactly were going on in their, particularly in their larval rearing problems as described by the KPLG. And what we found was there is a water quality problem in the host park. And based on those conversations and data provided by the various KPLG members, we see an impact of these seawater quality affecting larval rearing in oysters, abalone, shrimp, and finfish. And in addition, both a fish farm and an abalone farm report problems with their adults and brood stock that they attribute to this water quality issue. Two important points of the investigation were that there was no apparent impact on any of the algae production, either at those farms where they're having larval problems, their algae production was just fine. And at the algae companies that are growing algae, they didn't report any problems at all with their algae production, which was great. And then the other thing that's actually quite good is that there was no obvious pathogen associated with this problem. Animals had been submitted to diagnostic labs, and those didn't find any narrow form disease pathogen that was a common problem. So in that regard, that's a good thing. My opinion of the most likely causes after going through this thing for months and talking to everybody is I think there is some form of toxicity in the surface seawater, and where that toxicity is coming from, I think there's two possibilities. One, it could be biofouling within the pipeline. And, you know, NELHA has been pumping seawater through these pipes now for 40 years. And except for one single event, the pipelines have never been cleaned, which is a phenomenon they call pigging, where they send a device through the pipe to scour out the contents of the pipe. It was done once in the 1990s here at NELHA, and the folks that were there at the time said a lot of junk came out of the pipe when they pushed the pig through. The second possibility is maybe some buildup and or change of the Vibrio bacteria that are present in the NELHA water system. And there was some water testing that showed in certain circumstances some well-documented pathogenic bacteria. Vibrio coriolyticus was found in one set of samples, and the Vibrio bacteria could be the source of the toxin that the larval rearing groups are experiencing. Progress to date, the KPLG group were quite innovative in their response to this problem, and this is a great statement for the NELHA community. They tested a couple of chemical treatments. Biohydrox is a kind of chlorination step. They did see some improvement in that, but the biohydrox also induced some side effects on the animal quality that made that not so appealing. Ozone was installed in the Blue Ocean Mariculture's hatchery, and they did see a significant improvement in larval rearing survival in 2023 as a result of installation of the ozone. Other members of KPLG were so impressed with the results at Blue Ocean Mariculture that they too have purchased ozone systems. They're not yet in operation, to my understanding, but that's what people are trying. Some other successes that have been experienced that maybe point us in the right direction of where to go with on solving this problem is Pacific Hybrid has done some bioassays, oyster larval rearing trials using various supplies of seawater and water treatments. And the only ones that she got any good results out of were, one was she imported seawater from the oyster hatchery located on the Hilo side of the Big Island, and the larvae that were reared in those in that seawater seemed to look really healthy. And secondly, some samples of some NELHA groundwater, seawater were tested, and those are promising too. And so both of those results suggest that, in fact, the problems that people are talking about are not site-specific problems, but in fact are related to the water. Subsequent developments since the draft report, this is kind of interesting. Pacific Hybrid is continuing to test alternative seawater supplies, and I don't have the very latest information from Melissa, but those have looked promising. CTSA, which is the Center for Tropical Subtropical Aquaculture, it's the USDA-sponsored research group based at University of Hawaii, Manoa. When they reviewed the draft report on this water quality problem, Cheng-Sheng Lee, who is the director, offered up a $50,000 emergency fund to Greg to start working on this problem. And that was really great news to everybody. The third thing that's happened is Mika Brodsky, who's on this call, he's the state aquatic veterinarian. He's now been approved by his administrators to continue to work on this problem, and that's great to have his professional viewpoint focusing on this. And finally, during last month or so, we got some results testing the ultrafiltration system that's set up at NELHA. Bill Morton is on this call, and also Monica Dunce, who did the bacteriology on it. And those tests showed that the ultrafiltration system that Bill is championing removed 98% of the bacteria from the surface seawater, which was a really fantastic demonstration. So with all that said, I generated a list of recommendations for both the host park administration and for the KPLG members. At the last board meeting, when I presented these, the chair asked that those get broken into near-term and long-term, and so I did that for the final report. And today's summary, I've got them broken out into near-term and long-term goals. First of all, there's the host park recommendations, near-term, and number one is to explore potential of alternative seawater supplies for the hatcheries, and that work has already begun. And as I mentioned, Melissa from Pacific Hybrid is already testing some alternative seawater supplies. And in meeting with the KPLG membership last month after the board meeting, they told Greg that this issue was their top priority in what to do next on this item. And so I put that to be the number one recommendation, since that's the KPLG's top priority. Second, I'll say host park should continue to communicate with KPLG on the water quality issue and solutions. We're not out of the woods yet, and that communication is a very positive thing, and I think puts us on the path to solving this problem. Third is to replace the intake screening on the surface seawater intake pumps. These are where the water is being sucked out of the ocean, and this is just standard operating procedure on any seawater system, that you have to clean and or replace the screens on the pipes on a regular basis. And I'm recommending that host park do that immediately, and then also create a schedule for that cleaning and replacing on a regular basis. This isn't trivial because they're offshore in about 30 meters of water. And the fourth of the near-term recommendations is that NELHA should develop a flushing protocol to clear out the water in the surface seawater system. This is standard operating procedure in seawater pumping systems. There's an issue of where to dispose of that flushing water. I'm suggesting that they could dispose of it in the what's called the OTEC sump, but there are permitting issues that the NELHA staff are concerned about, and I didn't go into those in my report. It was beyond the scope. Okay, so then the long-term recommendations I have for the host park are the following. Or do you want to discuss those short-term ones now, or should I just plow on? Anybody?
I think we should go through the whole report, and then we can come back for certain parts for discussion, so that you get to provide the whole picture.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the long-term recommendations for the host park are the following. One, inspect the pipeline interior for biofouling. Back in the day when the system was being developed for the OTEC folks, all the OTEC engineers were very, very concerned about biofouling, and it was a key part of their EIS. And then over time, OTEC became less and less important in NELHA operations, and it sort of switched over, moved into the aquaculture thing, where pumping efficiency is not such a big deal, and the idea of biofouling sort of fell by the wayside. but in standard operating procedure in large pumping systems, biofouling is always a concern. And there should be a system in place for dealing with that. But anyways, we need to do some kind of inspection of the interior of the pipelines to look for biofouling. And this can be done section by section. It doesn't have to be the entire pipeline in one single inspection. It could be done piece by piece. Okay, so number two then is if significant biofouling is discovered within the pipeline, we need to develop a pigging system. NELHA needs to develop a pigging system to scour out that fouling in the pipe. Now, back in the 90s, Jan War was the operations manager, and he apparently orchestrated a pigging exercise of the pipeline from the Lighthouse pump station down to the Ka'u pump station. And he and Tony Mitchell were there waiting at the end when the pig came through the pipe. And he claims that at the discharge, 2 to 3 dump truck loads of organic material, including cowries and sea urchins and sand and debris, were dumped out of the pipe. So there was a lot of junk in there at that time, and that was done in the 1990s. And we need to think about how to do that again. Okay, so there's other options in terms of how to clean this pipeline, and I think those should be considered. The most recent development, advanced technology, is technology called nanobubbles, and they have been shown, there's extensive literature on nanobubble use for cleaning out the lining of pipelines. It's been done in lots of situations, although none at the scale of the NELHA pipeline, which is in some locations a 55-inch diameter pipe. So I would suggest a research project to start to look at that, you know, on a scaled down version to begin with. Number 4, there's no bacteria testing going on at NELHA, and it was part of the CEMP program back in the day, but it was discontinued. And I really think we need to know more about what the bacteria is inside that pipeline, both in terms of the amounts and the species. And we should also try to figure out what the effect on those bacteria are of flushing the pipeline, intake screen replacement, and possibly the nanobubble technology. Finally, for Host Park, there still should be a chemical testing done to try to identify what the chemical factors in the surface seawater could be that are causing the larval mortality problem. And these could be organic toxins. That's my first guess. It could be heavy metals, could be petroleum-based contaminants, could be pesticides, could be other things. And marine chemists are capable of figuring those things out. So I think that's still something that should be implemented. I also have a set of recommendations for the KPLG. You know, after visiting all of the KPLG farms and in careful detail going through their water treatment systems, I was not overly impressed with the seawater treatment systems other than the one at Blue Ocean Mariculture, which is state of the art. In the larval hatchery production of the KPLG folks, I strongly recommend that they all use probiotics in their larval rearing system. This is some great technology that can really help eliminate bacterial problems in larval rearing. Secondly, I think they need to upgrade their hatchery filtration system to incorporate what I call best practices. These things I list should be a minimum. That is mechanical filtration at 50, 10, 5, and half micron, and carbon filtration and some combination of UV, chlorination, or ozone. And as I said, the system at Bush and Mariculture is a great model, and they have the mechanical, the carbon, and they are using ozone, and it's quite impressive. The third thing about these filtration systems is they need to implement best practices for managing this filtration system. You can't just use it and then leave it and then go back and use it again. These systems need to be carefully maintained, and that includes regular flushing, an acid wash in the pipelines, a freshwater rinse of that acid wash, and then they dry out. And in a sort of state-of-the-art contemporary hatchery system around the world, and I've seen so many of these, they usually have two systems that are run in parallel. While one is running, the other one is resting. And then after the one running has been used for a while, they stop that, they put it through this maintenance routine while the other one gets activated. And then the one is resting, is dried out and just resting so that it's not building up biofouling or contamination. And the fourth point is, I think that the KPLG hatcheries could do a better job in their biosecurity protocols to prevent bacterial contamination. And that's just a never-ending challenge. And as climate change comes on, bacterial problems are probably going to increase. Long-term recommendations for KPLG. These are kind of some of the physical things they need to do. I suggest that they replace any above ground PVC pipe that feeds into their hatchery, because the PVC pipe is, the sunlight can shine through it and things grow. You get biofouling really fast in exposed PVC, and that's not good. Secondly, I think that they should be installing parallel seawater hatchery supply plumbing so that they can do what I mentioned earlier, alternate use. One is running while one is resting, and then you switch them back and forth. And while the one that is resting, it's completely dry, so it's not building up biofouling, and the biofouling will die if it's in there. And finally, number 3 in the long-term recs is that they should install hatchery bypass plumbing to enable them to flush out the seawater lines following interruptions in the seawater system, so that they're not getting any of the junk that might get stirred up when the seawater system gets turned on again. And that's it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope I didn't do this too fast.
No, thank you, Jim. I appreciate everything that you've done, and I think you've exceeded the scope of work there, and we appreciate everything. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. We have been focusing on, since the last meeting, short-term issues. We have not really focused on the long-term issues. We're trying to do everything we can to address the problem as quickly as we can and assist the businesses here in any way we can. Just a correction, Dr. Lee from CTSA did not offer any money to us, Jim, but thank you for thinking positive. He did indicate that he's very concerned and wants to help as much as he can. And he said he would be open to considering a request for emergency funding from NELHA outside his normal procurement process or submission of proposal process. So we had decided to submit a request to him. He said the limit is really in the $50,000 range. So staff came up with some ideas, 4 different ideas. And so before we submitted that, we wanted to meet with the larval group. And so we met with a majority of the members of the group several weeks ago. And that's what Jim is referring to. We presented our 4 options. And it was, as far as I'm concerned, and Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was unanimous that they wanted us to focus on looking at developing a seawater well as quickly as we could. And so we have applied to the Commission on Water Resource Management to drill a well inside the research campus. They have special conditions and rules and regulations for drilling wells. And so we looked at it, and number one is if the well is below 27 gallons per minute, it falls into a category where it could be more easily determined if we could get a permit to do that or not. In addition, I believe it's 19 parts per thousand. So if the water is 19 parts per thousand or higher, it's considered a seawater well. And it falls outside of their regulations or their determination for sustainable yield for fresh water for the Kona region. So we submitted a request to drill a, I believe, 80-foot well right here in the research campus, 26 gallons per minute. And and that would be most likely above 30, I would say, which is, I believe, acceptable to everyone. And we wanted to do that as quickly as we can. So we've applied for the permit. We're getting ready to submit our request to CTSA. And then if we can get those going, we need to do some outreach to the National Park Service as well, because we want to make sure that we can get the community's concerns and probably some other local groups. But it's a very small well compared to other large wells. And so we're hopeful that we could perhaps get approval and from the Seaworm Commission on Water Resource Management, as well as get approval from CTSA for funding. We think that the 50,000, if we do get that, we would apply for a request to do a study according to CTSA. So we would have a control parameter where we'd use existing water from our wells. And then we would also have a control from water from this new seawater well. And that would satisfy the requirements if we do it that way. And so he's been very, very supportive, very helpful, as well as Dr. Brodsky. We've talked with him a lot. And so, you know, that's where we are today. And that's what we're looking at. I'm always the optimist, but I hope we can get this seawater well before the end of the year. That's probably optimistic, but I think it's in that order. And the water could be shared between the businesses here in the park. And we, in addition, we'll talk about it later, but one of our pipelines, our Ka'u seawater pipeline, we had a mishap with that pipeline in the ocean several months ago, and it broke off, and we retrieved that. But we have indicated to Blue Ocean Mariculture, which is that pipeline is near their site. We have indicated to them we'd be willing to talk with them about inserting a pipeline inside that broken pipeline, and then they would have an alternative source of water. And so I think we'll talk later today about that, and we'll see where that goes. So those are our current immediate actions to try to work with and help the businesses here. That's all I had to say.
Okay, with that being said, we're gonna ask the board members for their questions on Dr. Wyman's report before opening it up to the public. Are there any board members with any questions or comments?
Just, I just have one, is that when the funding for the repairs and all the upgrades, are they going to be in for the next fiscal year, or how's that going to work, or do you have funds available?
Yeah, so, yeah, that's a very good question. So we can use, if it looks promising, probably most likely, no matter what we do, we will drill that well, whether we get the funding or not from CTSA, if we get the permits as well. And so we have the ability to fund that using our existing funding in this fiscal year, which started a couple of weeks ago. So we can, if it takes a while to get that money from CTSA, we could front load it using our special fund money. So I don't see that as a constraint.
Director Kim, you had a question?
Yes, I think we're all assuming that we should do this, and I think that's probably a good assumption, but I was just wondering, not being too experienced at NELHA, what is our legal obligation with respect to the water problem?
This is John, the deputy AG. I do know the leases include language that NELHA isn't, responsible for the water quality. So in a legal sense, they're not responsible for, changes in water quality. But I know, from everything that's going on, they're very concerned and want to make the tenants, as best as they can, things clean and working to expectations. But as far as legal liability, I think at least those clauses are in the leases.
So even if it's not our fault, it's our legal responsibility?
Not necessarily a legal responsibility. Like, if you were sued for it, you probably wouldn't be held liable. So I think as a ongoing entity that's trying to, meet certain things that are in statute and policy things that the board decides that, NELHA wants to do everything they can to make things right.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do it. I'm just trying to know what is our legal obligation. And also that if we're not legally obligated, we might act a little differently when we do make the repairs. I mean, because the actions we take are a form of admission, so if we can't do it for some reason, we decide not to do it, they're going to say, well, you already undertook the responsibility for it. So it's just good to know what our legal position is, I think. And then my second question is, what's the cost for all of these steps to be taken? Is it just in our budget, or we have insurance? I mean, what's the source of funding? What's the cost and what's the source?
For all of the short-term and long-term?
For everything that we may want to do, right?
We do not have that information.
Okay, so we're going to just kind of take it one step at a time.
Well, what we've done is try to address everything we can do as quickly as possible. That's our position right now. And we just got the report a couple of weeks ago. So we're doing the best we can. We're not sitting on our hands. And the source would be several sources. One is we could use our special fund balance, which is low. The seawater system by board policy is run on a break-even basis. So whatever it costs us to pump the water is what we charge. And our rates have been stable on a base rate since 2008. And we are going to do a seawater rate analysis this year. And so we could change the rate to pay for any repairs, but we don't know what the cost would be. Some of these
That's our right under the leases.
Absolutely, yes.
So I just think, I'm just saying we should take a business-like approach to it, you know, and understand the total costs we're looking at. What is our legal exposure? We might do it anyway, you know, I'm not opposed to that right now, but we don't even know what the cost is, so we can't even really commit to everything, right? So, you know, I think we have the right attitude, which is we're doing what we can. But sometime in the future, if there's an extent you just can't absorb, period, and we have to tell the tenants, sorry, we can't do it. You know, have we set ourselves up for a bad situation?
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to know what the total cost is at some point in the near future. You know, if you price out all of these steps that has been recommended, I think that's pretty logical to try to do that.
Okay.
Greg, if I,
Yeah.
and I think
It's,
Nate,
Director Sal.
Jamestown Seafood. My interpretation of our last meeting was that this test well would be used to kind of set precedent for us individual companies to then apply for and drill wells on our own property without, you know, independent of NELHA's funding. Am I correct in that interpretation? This just be to provide a framework for us to move forward.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so we haven't determined if drilling a seawater well is a solution or not. When Pacific Hybrid did their tests, we provided water to them directly from the ocean, directly from one of our sumps. And those tests failed as well. But when they were doing those tests a month or two, several months ago, it was a static test. So we were providing small amounts of water and they were putting it in a tank without any flow through. So we decided that in talking with Pacific Hybrid, we'd go the next step. We would provide 2,000 liters per day. And we've been doing that with them. And the results, according to Pacific Hybrid, have been very promising.
Right.
And so based upon that, when we met with the group, we wanted to do actually some more research and testing. The group, more private sector oriented, said, let's just do it. And so we said, sure. And so I thought the meeting was very positive, and we're working very well together right now to try to do what we can in the next very short term. But yeah, we have to look at the long-term costs, but I don't even know if we could ever get a permit to do some of these recommendations. It's a long process to work through that.
So if this well works, Greg, we can require the tenants to drill their own wells?
No, they would do that if that's what they want to do.
And that would relieve us of our obligations, if any?
I don't believe we have any obligations, as AG said.
I think it was unclear what the AG said. He started out saying that we're legally obligated, but then when I asked for clarification, he said, well, not in all situations, probably, you know. So anyway, we don't have to get to the bottom of it today, but I think you understand how I'm thinking about this.
Director Mirashiro, I see your hand and you're going to be next. I just wanted to ask Mr. Cole if he wants to clarify anything before we move to the next speaker.
No, I just restate that the leases have clauses, you know, that were agreed to by the tenants that say NELHA is not responsible for the water quality that's being provided for the tenants. So at that point, that's all I'll say. I mean, you brought up things like if you act, maybe you're making an admission of some type, but I didn't have an opinion on that at this time.
Okay, Director Miyashiro.
I do want to be clear that Director Kim, do you understand, I just want to restate that the board is on the same page as what was said about our legal responsibility here.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, are we still on the same page based on what John said?
Yeah, well, yeah. I think the first time I heard him, I might have misheard. I thought he said we have legal responsibilities of some kind, but now he's saying that we don't have any. So I'm not suggesting we don't do the right thing, but we don't want to do it ignorantly. So we want to know what is the lay of the land as far as legally. And so that we can, not make matters worse for NELHA should things get worse. So yes, if he said we're not legally responsible, that's fine. But as we do things and make promises in meetings and things, I think we have to just be cautious about what we say about it, because we don't want to assume a legal obligation. In other words, be revising all of the leases by our conduct and words. So I'm fine with what the AG attorney said.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification as well. I think one of the things, I believe the action item on the board right now is acceptance of the report. And we do recognize that, there is a missing cost component, as well as the recommendations are grouped in the near term and long term. I guess what I'm also hearing is that there are also centralized solutions where we focus on the pipeline versus decentralized, and we do individual welling on the individual property or individual lease plots. I guess my question is what happens after the report is accepted? It sounds like there's many different paths forward, and how does that get recognized? And my second question to follow up is if it is somewhat of a centralized mitigant, or i.e. we're doing more work on the undersea pipe, is there an inclination to have the cost rate-based as well? i.e. is that something that is acceptable to be passed on with the understanding that the facility is implementing more maintenance and best practices there? And I'm not sure if there's anything we could do right now, but I did want to put up those two things. I love reports. It identifies where we are in point in time, but what happens next and how do we get there?
For a point of clarification, Greg, are we taking action to accept the report, or were we just getting a status of the report?
We're getting a status report that there's no action, acceptance, or anything listed on the agenda. It's a final report presentation.
Okay.
We will take that, internalize it, and come back with more recommendations on how to address the issues in the report. And I want to make it clear that there's things that NELHA, recommendations for NELHA to do, but equally there are numerous recommendations for the users to do as well. And I think we both realize, and kind of addressing Director Kim's point, is we both realize that we need to work together to solve this problem. And I think we're, the businesses and NELHA, we're both on the same page, and we're trying to find a solution as expeditiously as possible. And I just want to make it clear, we don't really know the exact cause yet. We're still trying to pin that down. For example, some of the water that we delivered from the ocean to Pacific Hybrid, when we tested it, it didn't have any Vibrio in it. And then, correct?
Correct.
And then after a short period of time, it had Vibrio in it after we delivered it to Pacific Hybrid. So I'm just pointing out that it is a complicated process, and it's just important that we all work together to resolve the problem and not ignore it. So I think we recognized that it's important for us and for the businesses here. And so we hired Dr. Wyban to come up with some recommendations. I'll leave it with that. Director Miyashiro.
Does that
Thank you.
answer your question?
Just a quick, sure, a little bit, but just a quick follow-up is from a board perspective on this, it seems like it's an ongoing issue. And I believe in the past we were updated and it was more probably, it was always on our radar, but perhaps going forward, I'm not sure if there's a working group or how the report is applied, but whatever that governance structure is, it would be great to bring it back to the board meeting so we're kind of all on the same page, especially if it's financial impact, a land use impact, i.e. drilling on individual plots, and potentially the financial solutions or the financial implications as well. But thank you. Thank you.
I would agree with what Director Miyashiro is saying in terms of, so just to characterize, we have the report. We understand there have been discussions between KPLG and NELHA staff.
Right.
And that this seawater well is a pilot and a test case to continue discussions. And understanding the report, there has not been any decision or action to move on either the near term or the long term recommendations. We're just hearing the presentation at this time. But I think given the comments of Director Kim and given the board's wanting to really look at this very complicated situation and figure out how do we move forward together, I think the continued discussions and being able to co-design processes are vitally important as we, and keeping the board informed of the progress is very important for both sides to understand in moving forward. Board members, are you okay with that? Okay.
And I suppose on behalf of KPLG, I mean, we'd like to thank you for taking us seriously and getting to where we are now. That meeting that we had when we chose to go the well water route, I think that was a huge win for us on the business side of things to possibly be able to make this step forward.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Does you?
Yeah, I'm Gerald Hessinger, KPLG, Indo-Pacific. I just want to issue a cautionary note that the proposed solution of using well water is, success is not guaranteed.
Right.
It is experimental. Yeah. And one thing caught my attention in Dr. Wyban's recommendations. Near-term recommendations, he's talking about exploring converting existing groundwater wells to become a hatchery supply system. This is KPLG's top priority. I wasn't at the meeting, unfortunately, but I would characterize it as a less of a top priority and more of a last resort. Our top priority would be to come to work tomorrow, turn on a valve, and find out that what we're receiving from NELHA is pristine seawater. This is what we signed up for. And this is what NELHA preaches in its messaging. For example, look on NELHA's homepage, the old website, you will see that it delivers pristine water to its tenants. Look on NELHA's new website, you see the same thing, pristine water. Look on NELHA's social media, for example, LinkedIn, there it is again, delivering pristine water to the tenants. Go back through the YouTube archives and listen to presentations given by NELHA people, you will hear the same thing. we're delivering pristine water. The problem is there's a disconnect between the reality and what NELHA is telling the public and the tenants. I know this because last summer, I polled the KPLG members, and I did the same thing in January of this year in front of the consultant. And I asked the following question. By a show of hands, how many think that NELHA is delivering pristine seawater to our facilities on a consistent basis? Nobody agreed. Nobody raised their hands last summer, a year ago, or roughly 6 months ago in January. So the tenants don't think that NELHA is really fulfilling its messaging. Let's put it that way. And although the feeling of the board seems to be that from a legal standpoint, NELHA is not obligated to provide water of certain quality, just pick up the newsletter. This is the previous newsletter from winter of 23. And what we see here is that NELHA is dedicated to ensuring optimal seawater quality for its tenants. Optimal seawater quality needs to be defined. That's a quantitative term. NELHA says that it's ensuring. That implies that there is some kind of quality assurance program or some kind of quality control. And I think NELHA has to be very careful about overstating its capabilities. In the private sector, we call it bait and switch, where the advertisement says one thing, but when you get the product, it's something else.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. That's important guidance and insight.
Yeah. I
And
mean, the reason I'm here is because I have a 30-year commitment in my farm and in NELHA. If I didn't care, I wouldn't be here. So I have a lot of skin in the game, but I'm troubled by the disconnect between the messaging and the reality. And to find out the reality, we have to come to the board meetings and sit through 2 hours of discussion, which is very enlightening. But I'm of the opinion that if NELHA is not willing to guarantee the quality of its seawater, there should be a sign up on the highway that says that. Because people around the world and around the USA, elsewhere in Hawaii, are looking at the website, they're looking at the social media, they're looking at the messaging, and that's influencing their decisions to plan their lives around coming here.
understood. I mean, that's a very valid point.
Yeah.
So maybe the messaging needs to change if that's not the reality.
I think it's maybe time to reconsider, maybe soften it a little bit.
Yep.
If only to prevent
misunderstanding
down the road saying, hey, this isn't what we were promised. We thought, and if you Google NELHA, pristine, oh, the internet is saturated. It's a meme and it's a mantra. And it's been part of NELHA's DNA for decades. And I think it's just been hard for NELHA to let go of it in spite of abundant evidence to the contrary.
And I think that in the report, you know, given the discussion about how many years it's been since, you know, and what was found with respect to pipes being cleaned, et cetera, I think there's some things that the report points out that we need to take a look at.
Sure. In Dr. Wybett's presentation from the previous board meeting, which was May 21st, he described the pigging incident that was initiated by Jan Bohr and Tony Mitchell. And Jim described in detail how they were sitting there at the cow pump station. They could hear this pig rattling its way down the pipeline. And what they observed, we heard it again today, 2 to 3 dump truck loads of organic junk and debris came out of the pipe and went into the ocean. And I went back listened to that presentation. Then I went back to the draft minutes. And to my amazement, that part about the organic debris, the 2 to 3 dump truck loads, was deleted from the minutes. And it wasn't accidental, and I have the transcript here. Didn't want to interrupt the beginning of our meeting, but what I'm seeing is that some things that are said at the board meetings, which are not complementary to NELHA, are mysteriously being deleted from the minutes. Give another example real quick. Page 7 of the draft minutes, Dr. Wyban is talking about this issue affecting many of our anchor tenants, the big companies here. And then Director Jones chimed in and said, quote, "I'm happy to put on record that just based on lost cohorts alone, we've lost in excess of $10 million in revenue," end quote. That didn't make it into the draft minutes. And it's an extremely important statement because it conveys to the board and ultimately to the public, this is an issue that has a real financial cost. See, now in the previous meeting, May 21st, I pointed out that, gee, I think this situation is costing us millions. It's a multi-million-dollar problem. And Director Sid asked Executive Director Barber if we can poll the tenants to get an estimate of impacts. Director Barber said yes. And then Director Sid said, Chair Sid said, can we get that number across all tenants? Executive Director Barber said, we'll try. Now, the very next day, the consultant sent out a questionnaire to the tenants, to the impacted tenants, asking for economic impact estimates. And they sent those estimates to him, to Jim Wyban. Then Jim was instructed by NELHA, by the executive director, not to include those data in his final report because it's beyond the scope of work for that consultancy. However, the consultant went ahead and got the numbers anyway. We have the numbers. 8 tenants responded. We totaled up the numbers, just a straightforward addition of what they themselves said, including Director Jones's estimate, which was the largest. That number came to $24 million. And the top 2 respondents accounted for 70% of the total. The top 3 respondents accounted for about 90% of the total. So what the tenants are looking at, in their own view, in their own response, is a $24 million problem.
And we'll make sure that all of that is reflected in this series.
Yeah, and I would like to see that entered into the record.
They will be entered into these minutes as you have shared them and will be attributed to your recollection.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. So I have a document that backs up what I just said. And this is taken right from the tape of the last board meeting, May 21st. And if you sit there listening to the tape of the meeting with the draft minutes in front of you, you will see these discrepancies.
So you're talking about a transcript versus the minutes?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's understood.
So just to finish up, what I would like to propose, and to see the issue is we waited 7 weeks for the draft minutes to come out. Took 7 weeks. What if we still could do the draft minutes, but what if we just took the video file from these meetings and uploaded it to YouTube within a couple of days, like the legislature does for their hearings? You see, what is stopping us from doing that? Because you see, when the draft minutes go through the NELHA filter, they come out with changes in verbiage and changes in meaning. And I maintain that the public has a right to know everything, every word, every nuance that's stated at these meetings, because it is a public meeting, it is a public forum, and the public has a right to know what is being said. They may not be able to attend the meeting in person or via Zoom. Why don't we make it possible for them to review the meeting at a time and place of their choosing on a device of their choosing? And the way that's accomplished is by taking the Zoom file and loading it up to YouTube.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Sure, and it can be, if the meeting is on a Tuesday, what if we said, let's get that up on YouTube on Friday? Look, I know how to do it. I've done YouTube channels. My 13-year-old grandson can do it. We have the technology. What's stopping us?
Thank you for the suggestion.
That's all.
I think that's a really good suggestion. Thank you. Great.
Russell has his hand.
Okay, Russell, Director Suji.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. I just had some comments and I'm not sure if I want to make a recommendation or maybe you guys want to make a recommendation. But I think it's good that, Director Kim brought up the thing that we should know at some point, whether in the next meeting or whether we need a permitted interaction group to evaluate it, but we should know the total cost for the various fixes that are being recommended. And number two, source of funds. Those are primary questions usually government looks at. Initially, I want to say from as a previous Deputy Attorney General, I'd like to point out that when you have legal issues or legal questions, we want to ask the board or board's attorney, please evaluate whether it would be more appropriate to be done in executive session. We can always call an executive session and to evaluate those kind of issues very thoroughly and very frankly with our counsel, rather than in open session. Secondly, I think the questions that have been asked that are good points that need to be evaluated is whether to get down to the bottom line of what the problem is this something that is considered a routine maintenance issue, or is it something that came out of something unusual? Because I think from a government funding standpoint, I think NELHA and its tenants, one thing for routine maintenance, for cost of maintenance of the pipelines, that is usually built into the water charges and can be if it's considered to be something like that. But I can see where if it's an unusual event that maybe an act of God or something that nobody could prevent, or if it was an event that really was attributable to the certain types of tenants that operate these hatcheries, whatever it may be, I think can be passed on in various sources of funds. I mean, it doesn't always have to be passed on to the tenants. I think if the tenants have the wherewithal to seek funding from the legislature, maybe it could be passed on as a one-time big cost to the ledge if the ledge feels it's appropriate funding for the state. But I just thought all of these issues can be flushed out, and maybe question is whether it's better to just flush it out directly at the board level, or first at a PIG level, a permitted interaction group, and then bring back to the board. I just throw those issues out for something to think about. That was my comments, Chair.
Thank you, Director Suji. I think those are excellent recommendations. Do we have any more comments from the board? Do we have any more comments from anyone in the room? Any more comments from anyone in the public that is online? With respect to Director Suji's recommendation, is that in creating a permitted interaction group committee, is that something we have to wait for the next board meeting
Yes, it
to
would have to
agendize?
go on the
Okay,
agenda.
I just wanted to.
If you wanted to do something like make it a regular board meeting agenda item, you could,
we could do
say
that.
you're gonna do that, or
Okay.
if you want staff to come up with recommendations first, or go ahead and form a PIG.
Okay,
But a PIG would, require another meeting to do that.
thank you. I just wanted to double check that.
Yeah.
So, because I think those are great recommendations. So if it's okay with everyone, we will based on your recommendation, that'll be something we'll take up at the next board meeting, Director Suji, with respect to the recommendation of creating a permitted interaction group to address next steps as it relates to the seawater report. Okay. All right.
One thing I see, Director Bossert is indicating he has to leave at 11:20 in a few minutes.
Okay, let's move on to the items that require approval, if that's okay.
Yeah.
The next order of business is item 6, which is to create a permitted interaction group pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute, section 92-2.5, subsection B, for the purpose of recruiting and making a recommendation to the NELHA Board of Directors for the hiring of the NELHA Executive Director position. I'd like to take this time to thank Greg Barber for all of your service to NELHA. We greatly appreciate all of your work, and in a future occasion, we'll take the opportunity to really document that and highlight that for everyone in light of the time constraints that we have. We'd like to raise for the board's consideration and action the creation of a permitted interaction group for the purposes of taking the executive director job description that has been shared and utilizing that, giving the permitted interaction group the required role of coming up with a timeline and a process for which to recruit a new executive director, since Director Barber is retiring, and to interview applicants as well as, and then to bring the top three nominated individuals back to the board for recommendation of board action. With that being the request, does anyone have any comments and or things that they would like to add to that request for this PIG to be established?
So I just have a question about the process. Will the recommendation of this board have to go to the ledge for approval? Do they have to go through an approval process? Like a director appointee or anything like that?
No, it's the board.
It's the board, right? Okay.
It needs to be approved by DBED.
Oh, DBED will have to approve it. Okay.
The DBED director needs to approve it.
All right, thank you.
Do any other board members have any questions or items that they would like to bring up for discussion? Anyone in the room?
I just stepped out.
Okay, what we have on the table is item 6, which is the agenda item to create a permitted interaction group, which would take the executive director job description, come up with a process, put it out for recruiting, interview applicants, and come back to the board with the top 3 recommended individuals for our consideration and action moving forward. Are you okay with that? Okay. Could we have a motion to accept Director Kim? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Russell, second.
To create, we need to appoint members to be on.
Sorry. Okay.
If you want, we can wait till another.
No, can we go ahead and appoint members to be a part of the group? So Vice Chair Miyashiro, could I ask you to please be a part of that, of the permitted interaction group?
Yes.
Okay, are
I would very
there,
much like to be a part of the PIG.
okay, and may I be a part of that?
It has to be less than quorum, so it could be up to 6 board members.
Okay.
Could be a part of it.
Are there any other board members who would like to be a part of the permitted interaction group?
Yeah,
Nate?
I'll throw it up there.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so as of right now, did I miss anyone with hands? Can you see
I
the
don't
full?
see anybody.
Okay,
Can I say one thing?
yes.
In the past, I don't know if this is where you're going, but when I was hired, they did have a couple of staff members on that group. if that's something you may want to consider.
Are there staff members who would like to be on this group?
I'd be
Lawrence?
willing.
Okay,
Lawrence was on before.
okay. Do you have recommendations for any other staff members you would like to be on?
It probably would be helpful to have a second staff member. I don't have a recommendation yet. Do I need to provide a name?
You can add people other than board members at a later time.
Okay, okay,
We don't have to define them today.
Right, the board members need to be, but not
okay.
additional.
Dr. Bruce, would you like to be a part? Okay, so,
I have a question.
yes,
Greg. In my experience, in this situation, the question is going to arise, do the staff members get a vote? Because sometimes the board and the staff doesn't see completely the same criteria. And the board may have, priorities. And it's good to have the staff there though, for sure, because they're the ones that have to work with the person. And so, I don't know, that's something maybe the PIG is going to have to deal with is, are the staff members there to support, or do they actually get a vote on the PIG? The second question is, if you're not on the PIG, can the non-PIG board members give you comments on the job description? Because I think that's the key for people not on the PIG, that we all agree on the priorities of the position. So those are my two questions.
To the first one, I mean, the board can say that only board members are voting. I mean, the PIG as a whole comes back and makes recommendations to the whole board.
right,
So it'd generally be on a majority basis, at least, ideally a consensus. But if it wants to state that only the board members are voting on the recommendations to be made to the board, you could frame it that way. And the other thing, if you want input from board members on, certain issues and criteria or qualification descriptions would fit into that, they could, give those to the PIG to consider.
Well, because by the time it comes back to the board, people have been filtered out already. And so I think it's important for the entire board to know what the filter is.
Right.
Given the importance to NELHA attendance, I'd also like to volunteer for the group.
okay. So we have 1, 2, 5. And then we can have up to 6 or less than 6.
Up to, there's
Okay.
12 board members.
So the other board member I'd like to request be on this would be Dane Wicker, Director Wicker. Okay, with that being said, with respect to Director Kim's question, I would propose we leave it up to the permitted interaction group to decide with respect to voting and have it within the jurisdiction of the committee to look for comments from the rest of the board with respect to the job description. Would that be acceptable to this board?
I accept that.
Okay, with that now, could we please have a motion to approve?
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any objections?
I have no objection, but just to clarify what you said, the PIG can decide whether or not to ask the board for input, or will ask the board for input.
We'll ask the board for input.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification, can we state again?
Oh, yes.
For the record,
Yes, the motion
or 6 board
or
members.
the 6 board members will be Director Miyashiro. Oh, actually, John, can you state who they are?
Yeah, I have Director Miyashiro, Director Chair Kalifi, Director Sao, Director Bruce, Director Jones, and Director Wicker, and staff member Lawrence.
Okay.
One staff member to be named that later.
Yes, the PIG has the authority to add
Bring in
additional staff members.
And a PIG can invite other people for input or discussion or consideration, as it sees fit to do so to help them do their work.
Okay, with that, are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the financial report.
Do maybe a quick bio break.
Okay, there's a request for a quick bio break. So we'll take a break for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. We'll be back at 11:31. Certain age, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Well. Getting copied, everything's straightforward.
You're just hiding from the, you're hiding from the farm, like you're in the air conditioning.
I think the meeting room is on mute.
Oh my, so did you miss all of that?
Yes.
Sorry, okay. So let's redo this. I wanted to, so the meeting is officially called to order at 11:32, since no one could hear our practice round. One, thank you for all of your patience in me learning on the fly how to ensure that we have the protocols set for being acting as chair. I wanted to announce that Laurence has agreed to step in after Greg's departure to serve as interim executive director until a new executive director has been hired. So thank you for stepping in, as well as serving on the permitted interaction group to select the new executive director. With that being also said, there was a question that was brought up as to whether or not there's a need for a recruiting firm. That's something that will be done within the discussion by the permitted interaction group. And if there is a recommendation for a recruiting firm, that will come back, that'll be a recommendation that can be shared by to the board, and that the board would approve in the next board meeting. Is there anything else that we talked about? Okay, with that, we're gonna move into item 7 on the agenda, which is the financial report. Turn it over to you.
Thank you. So this is a report for the fiscal year that just ended, the 12 months that just ended June 30. So the way it works, for some of those of you that may not be familiar with the state system, it does take the state a little bit of time to close the book. So just because it's end of and beginning of July, all of the detailed reports that we're able to get from Department of Accounting and General Services are not available to us when we wrote this financial report last week. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that these are estimates. What I did is I took the final numbers for the first 11 months, just divided that by 11 and added 1 month, just to give the board an order of magnitude of where we are. So most likely it's overstated a little bit, I would think, in terms of expenditures. Revenue, probably more accurate than expenditures. But that's just an estimate, but this is a definite order of magnitude. So decrease for the year down $400,000. And really it's a couple of 3 main items. One, seawater system revenue is down $250,000. It's really lower demand and also lower electrical costs, and we charge a rate based upon the cost to pump. So when power goes down, the rate goes down. In terms of a electrical surcharge, rate goes down. The other one is electrical costs. So we have a pass-through in our revenue. We sub-meter a lot of the businesses here, and so electrical pass-through, electrical reimbursements is down because the rates are much lower than 20% lower than they were a year ago. Interest income, last year we got a dividend from our venture fund with Hatch One, and that was about $80,000, and that's the difference there. On a upside, positive note, total overall lease rent did increase slightly, 3% or so. I'm sorry, overall lease rent was flat for the year. So that includes outside the research campus and inside the research campus. But outside the larger park, it was up 3%. And the research campus was down by a like amount, so it ended up being flat. So labor services It is a significant increase again, up a healthy 50%. That's the revenue for the year. Are there any questions on that? Expenditures. So expenditures, I want to make sure they were flat, total revenue of $5 million, almost exactly the same. But there was a accounting change from the Department of Personnel, Human Resources, where our fringe benefits were miscalculated a year ago. And so to provide that revenue to the state, they charge us an additional $70,000 this year to correct the mistake that they made last year. This is not the pay that any of the staff are getting. This is just the fringe proportion that was a portion charged to our special fund. So no adjustment. Unfortunately, I guess. But we had to take the 70 hit. So we didn't know how to, we shred on the timesheets, we shredded into different cost centers and like seawater system administration. So we just used a shift share method to approximate that. So it's a little bit off, but I just leave it at that, just transparency. Seawater expenditures down $500,000. And again, we brought the microgrid online at the 55, and that in addition to lower electrical costs, decreased it. In addition, we shifted some of the parts over to the CIP appropriation. We had tenant utilities, again, electrical down, but offset by increase in freshwater reimbursements. Those are both passed through. Utilities, we've been struggling with this for a couple of years, and I think we got it under control now. And so this year, previously, we weren't showing those costs associated with the power purchase agreement for the new PV, and now we've corrected that. And so next year, it should be apples to apples, but it looks like it's increasing, but it's not. Beach park maintenance, we did renovate the bathrooms down there, and that's a cost. Administrative expenses up 20%. A lot of it's due to the insurance premium, which everybody's dealing with. Ours was significant as well. And economic impact survey, and we bought some new computers. So we have, from an IT standpoint, everything is up to date, and we're in good shape from an IT for staff as well as security. And we will be switching over to the state system. Our servers will be retired, and we're switching over to the state system next year. Special fund balance, unfortunately, we're down in the $500,000 range again. A couple of things. I think the expenditures are overestimated because whatever we spent in the first 11 months is probably not what we spent in the last month. There is one item where when we completed the negotiations for updating of the EIS, we added, when we originally asked for the appropriation, we weren't considering updating the master plan. And so we put that additional work into the scope, and the consultant came back in their price negotiation saying that they may need to do additional studies that are undetermined at this time to complete the master plan. And so we added $150,000 onto the 1.5 million to make it a $1.65 million contract for updating the EIS and the master plan. And so that charge is shown here. Again, arrears are very low, $50,000. A lot of that is due to a parent. And I don't know what's up with that company. They've been here for 3 or 4 years and they just don't pay on a regular basis, but they always pay. So they wait a couple, 3 months or so, and then they pay. We sent them a letter, termination letter again, which we do.
Breach of contract.
Breach of contract letter. And they agreed to pay by the end of the month. And also Ocean Rider owes some arrears for percentage rent, and they've also agreed to pay at the end. So we should be close. That's the end of my financial report.
Okay, are there any board members with any questions? Or items for discussion?
There is, sorry, I have something.
Yeah.
On the arrears report, how much of the clients on the arrears report are tenants versus services?
The majority is tenants. Number wise. We only have 2.
So I know
set of services and they're less than 750,000. 750,000.
Is that the triathlon and the Four Seasons?
Yeah.
Probably Woods Hole as well.
Their client. Yeah.
I mean, I know the amount on the arrears report isn't significant or large, but just as a general comment is we really shouldn't be having tenants on the arrears report, right? If they're not paying rent, is it an inclination they don't want to pay or they don't feel they need to pay? Or the other thing too that just brings up some red flags are they in trouble and that's why they're not paying? But in general, I don't feel that that's responsible tenant behavior, even if the amounts on the arrears report are nominal.
Thank you. Greg, do you have a response?
Didn't understand. Should we do it differently? Chair, Vice Chair, Mayor, sure. Or just making an observation?
Yeah, I think it's more observational right now because I think the arrears report has always been kind of a hot button with me just because, that's the one thing we do have a relationship. That's, at the core of it, that's kind of the relationship we enter with the tenants, right? It is a little alarming that there's tenants that don't pay until it gets to legal action. And I think when we do look at renewals, the behavior should be factored in as well, right? Now, I understand we're also a public entity, and it is a part of it where we are looking at nurturing new companies as well. So I do get the philosophical and the policy incentives as well. But I think it's also important to know, are they perhaps in trouble? And do they need more support or a dialogue there? Is it administratively, we're not on top of our percent rent billings? Or is it like a process where the base goes out and then percentage rent comes in later? Or is it administrative? So, well, it's nominal. I understand that there could be many reasons for a company being in arrears. And I think that type of granularity would also be a good data point when we look at the arrears report.
Okay. Yeah, it is not always straightforward. I can tell you that some of the companies that rely on grants and the funding is not coming through on a regular basis. Sometimes the federal government doesn't flow regularly, and so some of the businesses get behind in rent just because of a delay in the grant fund and things like that. So yeah, you're correct. It is. Each company has its own situation.
Are there any other directors online that have any comments or reactions? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Hasslinger, Indo-Pacific Sea Farms, KPLG. The issue of tenants in arrears has long been kind of a sore point for NELHA. And I'd like to make a suggestion. In looking back over the board minutes historically, I find there's sort of an erratic reporting with relation to tenants being in arrears, in that sometimes companies are identified with a specific number in which they're in arrears, sometimes not. So it's inconsistent, probably just inadvertently so, but it's a bad look for NELHA. So what I would like to propose is that in the future, when these board minutes come out, the companies that are in arrears are clearly identified along with the amount of money that they presently owe. Just to make the whole thing fair, and also maybe to give them a little bit of a nudge to get right with NELHA in terms of what they owe. Because it's certainly unfair for some companies to be in arrears for months at a time, even companies that get their income from grants. That's an executive decision. If a company's business model requires grants, they need to figure out how to pay the landlord on time. And that's the responsibility of the CEO.
Thank you.
So in summary, please consider putting, identifying companies that are in arrears with a specific number in a small graphic in the minutes.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement. Thank you. Okay, anyone else with comments? Okay, could we please have a motion to approve the financial report? Thank you, Gordon. Is there a second?
Sure, second.
Second.
Are there any objections? Hearing no objections, the financial report has been approved. Moving on to item 8, which is the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our proposal presenting to the board, and overall, it is amazing to me the amount of the amount of work that the staff here does. You know, we have a very small staff of 15 people. We handle over $16 million in projects, and I just want to thank the staff both here and online. You know, we really do a lot of work. It's incredible. Of the 16 million, 6 is a special fund for federal grants and 6 in CIP projects, no general fund. Special fund projected at 5.6, expenditures are at 6. So the special fund balance will decline. It's going to be a tough year. I do have schedules 1, 2, and 3. Schedule 1 is proposed revenue, 2 is proposed expenditures, and 3 is, to make it easier to understand, is pulling out all the non-recurring projects. So a lot of our budget is recurring. It's for year to year, and you know, we're just projecting it based upon last year's expenditure with a plus for inflation. And if we don't know of any changes, that's basically what we'll do. But the non-recurring ones are new items, and so we highlight those. Grant funds, we got the Hatch Accelerator Grant Fund from EDA. And then we have $600,000 remaining from our insurance funds for the project, for the property lost in Puna, sorry. CIP. The Encore Technologies project, the microgrid at the 55-inch pump station. We did get the UL certification tag on that container last week.
Good job.
They had to fly all the way out here and they put a yellow sticker on there. So we're all good again. So took a while on a container. So you learn something new every day. Existing contract, we have the Mackay Ocean Engineering for the design and the removal of the pipelines and getting ready to wrap that up, or? Yes. Yeah. Getting very close. And 2 new CIP is the EIS, which I talked about earlier. And then we have an agreement with a boating company, shipping company.
It's not a boat charter company.
Boat charter company. We hired a vessel to help us put some sensors in the ocean to determine freshwater seep offshore. So we did that. We went out to bid for that. This is CIP, and then we have an agreement with the University of Hawaii to actually design and place the sensors in the ocean and retrieve the data. But given their overhead, we decided to hire the vessel ourselves to save 50% or something
40.
like that. 40. Significant amount. So, and then 2 new CIP projects that we need to complete procurement on: the seawater system upgrades and the offshore EIS, which we received. So I'll go to the revenue increase of $600,000, 10%. Really, it's a couple of items. One is rent. Overall rent will increase based upon our projections for the year, $200,000. And then we have an increase in a special projects item of $200,000 from EDA revenue that we'll receive back from them. Proposed expenditures also expected to increase, mainly 2 items. There's one is one you'll probably hear more about, the temporary hazard pay. So the state agreed with one of the unions, Hawaii Government Employees Association, HGA, to provide hazard pay for employees that came into work during March 4, 2020 and March 25, 2022. If you came in for 1 day during that period, you would receive $10,000. If you came in more than 420 days during that period, you receive $20,000. And we have estimated that cost a one-time hit to our budget at $300,000, which is tough to deal with. Even applies to employees that didn't work here during that time and work for another state agency. We still have to cover those costs. This is agreement only with HGA. The union that brought it to the negotiating table first was UPW, of which we have 5 workers. They have not settled with the state, but we're just, from a budgetary standpoint, we're ballparking it at the same amounts that the HGA is getting. So these people have employees have applied for this, have filled out the forms. We have all the forms except for one. And this is something that will be paid to them over the next 6 months.
Okay.
So it's a difficult one for us to I mean, it's due to the employees, but it affects our special fund balance. And so in addition, we have the grant funds that come in from the accelerator and they go out. So it's kind of to some extent a pass through. And then on Schedule 3, I've identified 3 non-recurring projects. And you know, those are highlighted in green. So they have temporary hazard pay at 300. We have our 50th recognition event coming up in October. We're budgeting 35,000 for that. Migration to the state's network system. So long story, but we are switching over to the state's server system instead of running our own server system. Should eventually save us money. Our servers are needing replacement, and if we can switch it over to the state network, we'll save money in the long run. We put in $25,000 for seawater quality analysis phase 2. We don't really have any scope for that, but we have a kind of a plug in the budget that it was something that we need to do, but we do not have a scope at this time. Seawater well, we're budgeting at 65,000, and hopefully we will get $50,000 from University of Hawaii, USDA, and then I have the $200,000. That's our proposed budget. It's gonna be a tough year. You know, these budgets are order of magnitude, and we watch it every month. We watch it very closely, and you know, we could possibly increase our or the hit on the special fund balance could not be as difficult as is in this projection. I try to give it a worst case scenario just to make sure we're on our toes. That's our proposed budget.
And I asked this last year, but given the need to increase with community engagement and working with stakeholders, is that covered in this budget?
There's no special budget category. It would just be under recurring expenses.
Did you mean
possibly
on the ES?
Just in general for
Okay,
now.
okay, because it's not for the EIS, that's covered under that.
Yeah, this year that's a good point, Lawrence. During the EIS, it does have a significant amount of community involvement and outreach, but there's no line item. Do you think that's something we should consider?
I think it's important as we move forward, given the investment NELHA has been making in helping community members to better understand what is happening here and looking to partner with community members outside of tenants in just to address the point about messaging, right? To ensure people understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good message too.
Yeah. Board members, are there any comments or questions on the proposed budget? Anyone here?
I concur. I concur with Chair's assessment on the budget. Our budget should reflect our priorities. Once again, great job, Greg, on the budget and your staff for all that you guys do. Every time I look at what you guys accomplish, I'm always in awe that as a state agency, there's you guys are really running, right? My question on the budget as it's proposed in its current form is how much of it is dependent on, Greg, your tenure? And with the transition, what are the anticipated financial impacts?
So you're saying it'll go up, the revenue will go up significantly after I leave? Probably, I didn't take that into account, you know. But yeah, thank you.
Sure, but quite the opposite, right? Like I'm assuming right now you guys are a pretty well-oiled machine. I know a lot of what we talk about at the board level are the one-offs and priorities, But I think underneath it all, your group is doing a ton of maintenance and administrative work and really keeping the lights on. So my question is the budget padded at any way? Just because, you know, there is a transition. And I also want to kind of understand what should the almost like the canary in the coal mine be, because I think that to onboard a good executive director, it's not something that happens overnight, right? Should the board be paying special attention to the special fund balance, or like what's the number where we can look at to being like, okay, Greg's not here. We know that Laurence is also very fully capable, but if there is anything we should be paying special attention to, what is it?
Yeah, no, thank you. I didn't make any adjustments based upon any personnel changes. You know, a lot of the revenue is contractual, I would say. You know, it's based upon lease agreements, and I don't know if there would be much change, actually. I think the change would be on the expenditure side, depending on, you know, how the decision is made to release projects, money for special projects, or how to manage expenditures. That's really where the probably the discretion would be, but probably not on the revenue side. You think they're pretty?
I think within the range that you've allowed for errors,
Yeah.
Both sides were probably could expect it to be, it's not going to change too much. We do have some changes upcoming in leases that will, you know, revenue might go down. Can't really talk about them now, but that will happen. The fact that we have one less person, our staff is already just 12. That is clearly going to affect us.
Yeah, the thing is to really focus on is what we focus on is special fund balance. You know, it took us 3 or 4 years to get it back up to $1 million. Not to say it couldn't. That 300,000 for temporary hazard pay is a tough one on the special fund. There's nothing we can do. And then again, I overestimate that just to make it a worst case scenario. Could come in at 250, but hard to say.
Yeah.
It's a budget, you know.
When you have 12 employees at 20,000, that's 240, right? So,
Yeah.
okay.
I know this is a budget discussion, but I think the irony is like, you know, the work that Greg's been doing for these reporting and to keep even the board functional, I'm going to assume it's falling on someone, and staff is also down now 1 FTE. I want to compound that by saying, you know, given the amount of transition that the organization is going through, needing to find a new executive director, I'm pretty sure there will be some in-depth discussions on what the direction is going to look like. And we also have the seawater issue going on as well. Is I was going to actually propose additional meetings just because with the PIG structure, it's not the easiest structure to work with. And in fact, it's more protracted because you need more meetings. So I do want to acknowledge that the board realizes that there is going to be a lack of resources, and how do we support and mitigate that too?
And is that something that we need to agendize in terms of how many meetings we have, or can we?
Not necessarily. I mean, you can
Okay,
offer to have monthly meetings or.
right.
whatever
So
the case
given,
is.
I think that's an excellent point, Director Miyashiro, in terms of the level of transition with the strategic plan and the additional, being able to provide additional support. I understand that there's a lot of work that goes into preparing a board meeting, and we can work with you on that. I think, but I would agree that I think moving forward, we probably are going to want to meet monthly versus every other month. Do any of the other directors have a objection and or comment with respect to that?
I don't have any objections, but I will have some challenges because I've got quite a bit of traveling. Scheduled over the next year.
Okay. And hopefully it'll just be until we have another executive director on board. How about you, Nate, or?
Travel a lot, but
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
okay, just to be able to provide the support as we go through this transition.
So for our Shellfish Association, we twice in the last 3 years, we're looking for new executive directors, and it was a prolonged experience, and we were constantly in contact. So I think that's good.
So just so we can, okay. Any directors online, do you have any comments or objections if we increase our meeting schedule to once a month? They don't have to be as long, because we'll be meeting more frequently, but it would allow us to be able to provide the level of support that we would need to do. Okay, thank you. Going back to the budget, could, if there are no other discussion items, could we please get a motion to approve the 2025 budget?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Director Moore. Any second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Hilton. Does anyone have any objections? Hearing no objections, the proposed budget for FY 2025 is hereby approved. Okay, next, we only have two more items.
This is as amended, right? As amended with a specific carve out and identification of funds for community events or for community engagement.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Does the 50th celebration qualify as that or no?
It's an outreach event, but it's just this one single day.
It's one,
It's a lot of work, but it's not an ongoing. And I think Chair was referring to an ongoing.
Just the prioritization of, as we move forward, the need to engage. Right, it does, just as we need to prioritize it moving forward.
We do.
Thank you, Director Miyashiro. Okay, item 9, Executive Director's Informational Status Report.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief on this since I just reported on this a month ago. So like I said, we did get the UL certification for the 55-inch microgrid. So on water, well, some people here may be interested to know some update on that. So so we had 2 Seaworm Commission on Water Resource Management meetings in March and April. We did not receive a permit in April. We had hoped to get that. It was deferred and we were asked to do some additional work in terms of documentation, as well as the Seaworm staff was asked to do some additional documentation. So we are completing that now. And we hope to complete that. We hope to be on the Seaworm agenda in September. And if we can get approval at that meeting, then we would fall into the executive budget cycle. Last year, we were not funded, even though it was a CIP request. And like for several years, because we didn't have the permit, my feeling is that the legislature would rather expend that money on something else rather than give us the money since we don't have the permit. And we've been asking for that money for several years. So I guess they're wise. So we want to get the permit and get in the budget cycle. That's our goal this year. You know, I'll leave it at that. Those are the major update in the last month. And I also prepared a summary of new projects or projects for this upcoming year. Laurence?
Oh.
For you? No. I just saying that. Good luck. But anyway, so.
You got this one. Not sure anymore.
So I just wanted to kind of leave with just kind of like a broad brush, you know, to give you some idea of what I'm thinking. You can change it as you see fit coming up. But, you know, continuing to do additional marking with the EDA funds, and that's a second one. And I think we have 100,000. We just went out to bid. So we'll do some additional marketing. The seawater well is in there. The upgrading of the microgrid in this research campus is something that we need to do. We've been talking about, and we have the funds in our CIP budget for it. Seawater system rate analysis. We talked about that last year, but because we had issues with the microgrid at the 55, it didn't make any sense until we had that data. And HNEI, University Natural Energy Institute, has agreed to give us some funding to help us update our long-term energy strategy plan. And so we're meeting with them next week, or the week is within the next several weeks, to talk about that scope. And we hope that the chair could join us on that meeting, as we've talked about earlier. The two projects, the update of the offshore EIS is something that is going to take some time, but we need to start focusing on that procurement. Last one, there's a new one there, probably, I don't know how that's going to work out, but the governor established a Marine Affairs Committee for developing a statewide ocean economy plan that the governor wants to submit to the legislature to increase focus on the ocean economy. I was appointed to that committee by the governor. We've met once so far. I don't know if my resigning here, leaving here, will affect that, my term on that committee or not. But if I do jump off that committee, then I hope another NELHA representative. I think that's really important. I think the governor really shows his resolve on seeing the value of the blue economy. And I think this is the first time it's been done in 50 years. So he seems committed to me. I'll leave it at that. And I want to thank you for everything.
Thank you very much. So we really appreciate all of your work, Greg. I know this will likely be last meeting, but we'll see.
Well, if it's every month.
Right, if it's every month, it will be
Chance for
next
another
month.
one.
But with that being said,
Sneaky.
I have announcements. We really do thank you and the staff, all of the staff who are online, as well as everyone in the room, for all of the work that you're doing with respect to NELHA. And thank you for all of the tenants and the interested stakeholders who come and attend the meetings. Announcement. So our scheduled meeting dates will be shifting, and we'll send out an email with respect to the monthly dates, likely the third Tuesday of the month. And therefore our next regularly scheduled NELHA meeting will be in August as opposed to September.
Yeah. And I would also say, just a heads up, that September one is the third Tuesday of every odd numbered month. So But that September, the Seaworm has the same schedule as us.
Yeah, so we can
And we
adjust
need
it.
to be on that
Yes.
agenda, so most likely that meeting will be in the afternoon.
Okay, and we can adjust.
I won't be able to make that.
Okay. Board members, do you have any board members have any comments before we adjourn the meeting? I'd just like to say thank you for your patience. We'll get the meetings moving a little bit more efficiently next month, especially if we have them more frequently. Any comments from anyone here? Okay, with that, thank you, John, for coming and being in person. Our meeting will be adjourned as of 12:17 PM Hawaii Standard Time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.